Hi, everybody. Welcome to our micro-learning series hosted by Sigma called Promoting Self-Care. My name is Michelle Schuster, and I'm an inpatient staff nurse at Boston Children's Hospital. I work on the hematology-oncology unit. And I'm here with my colleague, Dennis.
Hi, I'm Dennis Doherty. I'm a nursing professional development specialist in the Department of Clinical Education, Informatics, Practice, and Quality. We'll start off this session by saying that we don't have any conflicts of interest to disclose and no industry relationships to disclose for you. We have one objective for this session, and it's that you'll explore strategies to promote self-care. When you think about the term self-care, when you hear that term, what comes to mind? Really think about it for a second. What does self-care mean to you? We want to ask you to reflect and think about, are you practicing any self-care strategies today? This could be on a daily basis, a weekly basis, ad hoc, but how are you practicing self-care today? Give you a moment to think about that before we get into our content. Michelle and I have done a lot of programs about self-care at our organization. And when participants talk about self-care, the go-to thing typically tends to be exercise, I find. Have you found that, Michelle?
Yeah, definitely exercise. When people think of self-care, that's where their minds typically go.
They talk about their, whether they're runners or hikers, or they do yoga. Whatever their exercise routine is, usually more often than not, it's sort of, well, I exercise and that's my form of self-care. Another thing that seems to come up is nutrition, right?
I've heard a lot of my colleagues and my friends really talking about how they've gotten into cooking meals as a family more now since COVID has happened. And I know a lot of colleagues have started gardens and they're creating food that they're now cooking with. And the amount of zucchini bread I'm seeing on Instagram, it just looks so amazing, so delicious. So a lot of people are using nutrition as one of ways to promote self-care.
Another thing, you mentioned the gardening thing, and I could see this as like a hobby that some folks might have started doing, but hobbies are big, right? When we carve out time for interests that we have, hobbies that we might have. It could be gardening, it could be doing puzzles or reading books or knitting or whatever the hobby might be. A lot of times folks talk about their hobbies as a way of carving out opportunities for self-care for themselves.
Dennis, as a new hobby, I've picked up adult coloring books and I am absolutely in love with it.
I've heard a lot of folks doing this type of thing, and
it's
I don't know
I didn't
how
know I
is
needed
it
in my life. It's wonderful. It's such, I put on some music and I color and I'm able to be creative, and I love that little outpour of creativity, and it's a stress reliever for me. So I'm enjoying that.
That's really cool. I think that one of my hobbies is, it's music. It's listening to music. It's reading about music. People know me, they know I'm into music. So I really try to find time when I can to get into my music geek head, and
That's awesome.
Whether it's listening or reading or watching documentaries about musicians, that's sort of my thing.
All the above, yes.
Yeah.
So spirituality is another thing that we've heard people talk about and mention as important for their self-care. So people are finding unique ways to maybe worship virtually or find more connection within soul searching and different things like that. So spirituality is definitely another way that people value self-care.
Another thing that I've seen a lot of folks bring up and talk about recently is personal growth. And it's doing whatever they need to do to carve out opportunities to, sort of expand their worldview. And so something that I've, a lot of, I think, friends and acquaintances have sort of started doing, particularly related to the current times, and they've really dedicated time to expanding their worldview when it comes to diversity and inclusion, whether it's reading, whether it's watching documentaries on Netflix or streaming service. A lot of folks have seemed to take this opportunity as an opportunity to sort of grow personally. So I think that's another way that we can say that people can carve out time for self-care.
Yeah.
We're going to talk a little bit about mindfulness in particular. There's a lot of ways, things that you might already be doing in your personal life to take care of oneself. We want to just shed a light on the power of mindfulness.
Yeah, so whether this is a new term for you or you've been practicing mindfulness daily and that's part of your routine, we just wanted to introduce it and maybe say some new things about it that you guys might be able to take away. So Dr. Jon Kabat-Zinn has done a lot of work about mindfulness in healthcare and in medicine, and he described mindfulness as paying attention in a particular way on purpose to the present moment non-judgmentally. So what mindfulness really does is it gets us out of that autopilot mode. It helps us to become more aware of what's actually happening in front of us. And it's really important to kind of take that pause and recognize we might go through our day or our lives without really ever noticing what's happening right in that moment. So something important about mindfulness is that it's really not focused on the length of activity, but it's more on the frequency. So what I mean by that is that practicing mindfulness for even 5 minutes each and every day, it's about creating those routines. That's what makes it become a habit and helps change your brain and your way of thinking. So it's not about, well, do I have an hour to do yoga 3 times a week? So maybe some people can't fit an hour into their day, and that's okay. But it's about that short burst of time. So just doing, as I mentioned, maybe even 5 minutes every single day, just starting to create that routine and those habits. And that's what really matters, and that's what really helps to start those changes. So let's think about our brain, and we're not going to do too much A&P lessons here, but I just want to kind of explore how mindful practice actually physically makes a difference for individuals. So mindful practice and mindfulness can actually help your amygdala become less activated. So when we're introduced to a stressful event or there's a stressful trigger that's going on, our amygdala is sending distress signals to our hypothalamus. And our hypothalamus is activating that sympathetic nervous system, and the end result is that cortisol is released. So cortisol is that it's kind of that fight or flight, bringing us up, getting that extra adrenaline going in our body. But what mindfulness actually can do is help to reduce extra cortisol. So sometimes if we're living almost always at a 10 out of 10 on anxiety or worry or this or that, mindful practice can help decrease that extra cortisol when it's not needed. So it's actually really important for your body. It actually can help enhance your ability to pay attention and notice what's in front of you. And finally, mindful practice has been shown to enhance your brain regions responsible for attention and executive function. So this is that problem solving and intentional action. So mindfulness practice has been shown in the literature to actually change how your brain responds and how it shows up every day. So let's look at why it matters for nurses, because we are talking to a nursing audience. So whether you're at the bedside or whether you're more in a leadership, professional development position or education, it's just definitely important to understand why mindfulness is so important. So mindfulness can allow us to have greater situational awareness. I'm going to talk about this first bubble first. So having less distraction, because you're able to be present in the moment and not thinking about what's about to happen or what's just happened. You are in the moment. And by being present, your assessment skills are able to be improved because you're looking at what patient is in front of you and you're able to focus on those signs and symptoms that you're seeing. The risk of making a clinical error is reduced by practicing mindfulness. It increases your ability to pay attention to others' well-being, and it allows you to have a deeper understanding of clinical situations. Another important point that the literature makes of why mindfulness matters for really any healthcare individual and nurses is that it strengthens the communication with your patients, coworkers, and families. And all of these can lead to better clinical outcomes, especially in crisis situations. And the last point I'm going to talk about is that mindfulness has been shown to improve your coping skills. So improved coping leads to decreased burnout, reduced stress response. Remember when we talked about decreasing that cortisol? It helps better regulate your emotions, improve your overall sense of well-being, and it can actually increase your job satisfaction. So mindfulness is definitely an important concept in nursing.
I think it's great that you share how it can help us as nurses professionally. And as you're talking, Michelle, when I see it as really beneficial to when we're not working and having greater situational awareness about our time, our personal time, our time with our families. If we're someone that like their work life is sort of like ciphering into their personal life, really taking that moment to be intentional about, well, I'm here with my family right now, or I'm here with my friends, I'm doing these things, really can help you appreciate those moments. And I could see it enhancing your communication with family and friends as well. You're not worried about what's going on back at the hospital or back at work, wherever you might be. So really, really all around a lot of benefits.
Right.
So I think we want to talk a little bit about just some strategies. If you're watching this, you might say, wow, that wasn't rocket science. And we're going to be the first to admit it. This isn't rocket science. But we want to be intentional in talking about this because it's important. And the first thing that comes up a lot is, we already talked about people sort of go to exercise and physical activity as their opportunity for self-care. And so I think that approaching our exercise routine, or if we're going for a walk or we're going on a hike, with that intentionality of this is going to be an opportunity for me to reset, to clear my head, is a really sort of way of bringing mindfulness into your physical activity. If you're going through a routine, but you're still sort of stuck on what happened yesterday, or really worried about what's happening tomorrow, that is, that's tough. At the same time, I do see like a workout routine or an exercise routine as a way of resetting. I have a boss who often says to me, like when I get upset about things that happen, like professionally at work, they'll be like, Dennis, you have like an hour to be upset about this, and then you have to get over it. And I think that sometimes when I find myself when I'm on like a run, I might be like using that as like, the way that I'm going to get up to do it. I'm going to run, and I sort of process whatever might be bothering me that day. But by the end of that run, I don't know if it's the endorphins kicking in or if the cortisol's just gone, the level's down. But for some reason, everything feels a lot better. So absolutely, physical activity is huge.
Yeah, I have to say that I have created a home gym in my house, and sometimes I'm really bad at separating work from working out. So I love that you can combine it to make a meaningful process sometimes when you're working through a situation. But for me, sometimes I'm really bad and I'll be working out and then I'll be like, oh, I need to check that email, see if anybody responded to me. When instead, I just need to give myself that time to say, okay, I'm going to work out for 45 minutes. My emails will still be there when I'm done, but this is my time for me. So being intentional about that physical activity is definitely an important way to make it a mindful activity.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about meditation apps?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I think we think about meditation, and Michelle said that even a few minutes a day is a great way to just get into a routine that will help you to, be present in that moment. And some of us might be great at just being able to like do that on our own, but a lot of us, like me, we need sort of that guidance. And so there's a lot of apps out there that you can download onto your phone or your iPad. We got Calm, we got 10% Happier, there's Headspace, and these there's a lot of free apps, or you can subscribe to them. But there's a lot of free stuff out there that can just get you into this routine of being mindful of your moment, and they could be as quick as 3 minutes or as long as 10 minutes or even longer, depending on what you're looking for. But I would, if you haven't already, look around your app store for mindfulness apps. That can be a great way to just sort of get started.
So another way we like to think of intentionally bringing mindful moments into our life is through our senses. So touch is one of those ways that we are constantly encountering textures and feelings and warm, cold, different sensations, but making it mindful moments is what we want to talk about. So let's think about when you do hand hygiene. So whether you're using Purell, you can maybe feel how it's wet at first and then feeling how it dries and just feeling that sensation in your hands as you're rubbing it in. So Purelling and going in and out is something that we're doing so frequently in our jobs and in our personal lives now. But what about if we stop and make it a mindful moment? And what if as we're doing that hand hygiene, we are feeling that sensation and really taking that moment to incorporate the breathing and thinking about what we're doing? So one way I like to also incorporate touch into making it a mindful moment is when I'm doing my dishes. So that was something when I would have a lot of dishes stacked up in the kitchen, I would be stressed, it'd be annoying, one more thing to do on the list. But instead of looking at it like that, I now look at it as an opportunity to reflect and be mindful. And you're probably thinking, Michelle, what are you talking about? But when I'm doing the dishes and when I'm feeling the soap, feeling the warm water running over my hands, I make it mindful moments. And as I'm washing my pots and different things like that, I'm thinking about those meals that my husband cooked for us. And I'm thinking about those good moments that we've shared, creating those food and creating those moments. So I've turned a task and a chore into a mindful practice.
Michelle, I think only you can turn doing the dishes into a great activity.
It's all about that mindset.
Right. I want to talk a little bit about sound and hearing, and this is like, tapping into another one of our senses to sort of bring ourselves to the present moment. And, I was mentioning the physical activity, and so I'm thinking about like, when you're outside, you're going for a walk, or you're going for a hike, or you're just, spending time outside. You could use your, sense of hearing to bring it into the present moment. One activity you can do is really sort of try to pay attention to what you're hearing out there in nature. Or if you live in the city, maybe it's just like the urban sounds, but what's the furthest, most distant sound you can hear? Try to pick up on that. What is it? Where is it coming from? And then flip that around and try to find like the most, proximal sound that you can possibly hear. So maybe, in the distance you're hearing a bird chirping, or maybe you're hearing the rustling of leaves as the wind blows through a tree. But more close to you might hear like the sound of a car driving by, or a kid in your neighborhood yelling or playing or something like that. So that sort of go for the most distant to the most proximal sound is a really quick activity that probably takes 10 seconds, 20 seconds to do in a way to really bring yourself into the present moment when you're out for a walk or just hanging out, doing your gardening, your new activity that you're doing, your gardening. You can be doing this as well, whatever it might be.
Right. So create new opportunities within familiar routines. I really like that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the next piece is the breath. And so many times this is what really people think of when they think of mindfulness. So many times we link the breath to yoga and doing different practices, but really we breathe to survive. That's not rocket science either. But what it's about is that taking intentional breaths and maybe using your hand to put it on your chest and take deep breaths. Feel that rise and fall of your chest or your abdomen. Just doing breath work with intentionality. That's kind of what this is. So you can use your apps, the meditation apps that we mentioned before, to help you with this exercise, or it's something you can just do on your own. But really focusing on your breathing is something that can help calm down your body, and it can help you kind of just feel rejuvenated in a way. And I really like doing different breath work.
I think there's a lot of just opportunities online. Some of the stuff that we've shared with our participants in the past has been Yale has a happiness class that you could take. It's a real class that you actually, I think you get homework and there's assignments for each week. So there's a class of just about happiness. There are opportunities to do online or remote exercise classes through area gyms and yoga classes and bike classes and just, general exercise classes. I know Peloton was offering their exercise services for free for healthcare workers for this year. But I would, just if there's something that you're interested in, there's resources out there to support you, whether it's through YouTube or Instagram or Facebook Live or whatever. I'd look around for just other resources that could support you in your self-care activities.
I'd also throw in here to check out your professional nursing organization. So like how Sigma is offering these micro-learning sessions, there are other self-care packages through the American Nurses Association and maybe through your own professional organization. So for me, the HEMONC organization has different COVID resources for nurses. So maybe just check out some of those free opportunities to learn more.
We hope this session provided an opportunity for you to think about how you practice self-care and maybe gave you some new ways of things that you can incorporate into your self-care practice.
So everybody, we want you to definitely think of what is one thing you can walk away with and start. So whether you are already practicing mindfulness in your day, just be intentional about it. Or if this is a new practice, maybe pick one or two things that you want to start. But we definitely challenge you all to try to incorporate a mindful moment in your day going forward. So we want to thank you for attending this micro-learning session, and we want to encourage you guys to take a listen to our next one called Finding Balance. So if you want to learn a little bit more about how to incorporate balance into your everyday life, definitely check out our next micro-learning session. Thank you all.
Thank you for joining.